Okay, we're just going to go back to part one, which is the Venus part, chapter one, just the last minute or two.
Rose only a little way over the horizon and remained there without moving. The moon also stood still. I am dealing with the Western Hemisphere first, because the biblical stories were not known to its aborigines when it was discovered. Also, the tradition preserved by Sahagun bears no trace of having been introduced by the missionaries. In his version, there is nothing to suggest Joshua ben Nun and his war against the Canaanite kings, and the position of the sun, only a very little above the eastern horizon, differs from the biblical text, though it does not contradict it. We could follow a path around the earth and inquire into the various traditions concerning the prolonged night and prolonged day, with sun and moon absent or tarrying at different points along the zodiac, while the earth underwent a bombardment of stones in a world ablaze. But we must postpone this journey. There was more than one catastrophe when, according to the memory of mankind, the earth refused to play the chronometer by undisturbed rotation on its axis. First, we must differentiate the single occurrences of cosmic catastrophes, some of which took place before the one described here, some after it.
All right, and the one described there, to my way of feeling, was the Great Global Flood. Okay, now he's going to explain there wasn't just one terrible flood, there was other ones. And he puts them into extreme context because he went to everywhere on the earth and got their ancient accounts, not recent historical accounts, ancient accounts, not something academic that made up something about what they thought would happen. These were the people that were there that carried these traditions down through their history. Now here it goes.
Chapter 2. 52 years earlier. The pre-Columbian written traditions of Central America tell us that 52 years before the catastrophe that closely resembles that of the time of Joshua, another catastrophe of world dimensions had occurred. It is therefore only natural to go back to the old Israelite traditions, as narrated in the scriptures, to determine whether they contain evidence of a corresponding catastrophe. The time of the wandering in the desert is given by the scriptures as 40 years. Then, for a number of years before the day of the disturbed movement of the earth, the protracted conquest of Palestine went on. It seems reasonable, therefore, to ask whether a date 52 years before this event would coincide with the time of the Exodus. In the work Ages in Chaos, I describe at some length the catastrophe that visited Egypt and Arabia. In that work, it is explained that the Exodus took place amid a great natural upheaval that terminated the period of Egyptian history known as the Middle Kingdom. There, I endeavor to show that contemporary Egyptian documents describe the same disaster accompanied by the plagues of Egypt, and that the traditions of the Arabian Peninsula relate similar occurrences in this land and on the shores of the Red Sea. In that work, I refer also to Beeke's idea that Mount Sinai was a smoking volcano. However, I reveal that the scope of the catastrophe must have exceeded by far the measure of the disturbance which could be caused by one active volcano, and I promise to answer the question, of what nature and dimension was this catastrophe, or this series of catastrophes accompanied by plagues, and to publish an investigation into the nature of great catastrophes of the past. Both works, The Reconstruction of History and The Reconstruction of Natural History, were conceived within the short interval of half a year. The desire to establish a correct historical chronology before fitting the acts of nature into the periods of human history impelled me to complete Ages in Chaos first. I shall employ some of the historical material from the first chapters of Ages in Chaos. There, I use it for the purpose of synchronizing events in the histories of the countries around the Eastern Mediterranean. Here, I shall use it to show that the same events took place all around the world, and to explain the nature of these events. The Red World.
Let me just make one mention of this. If the great global flood that I think was the Triassic, and it was devastating, and it was worldwide, that's just like you said, it didn't just happen in one place, it was entire world was covered with the water and all of the boiling hot repercussions of being impacted by Venus. And it's hard to believe that even anybody could have lived through it, but it appears that a lot of people lived through it. Now, they claim in the ancient texts about Noah that it was just Noah's immediate family, basically, that lived through this disaster, but that does not seem to be supported by what Velikovsky's saying. Now, who's right, who's wrong? I don't know. You got to listen to it and think, when these catastrophes happen, how serious was this 52-year event prior to the great global destruction? And I think, well, at this point, it's a little hard to pin down anything, to be perfectly honest with you. We just have to listen and try to make sense of what Velikovsky discovered and what is written and what is now shown. And the Triassic is a layer which red, gray, and black worldwide. That is the marker that separates these events in my mind. That would, to me, be the one that created all the giant mud fossils, and giants killed them all and did just exactly what it said in the Bible. They brought a great conclusion to this race of giants and wiped them off the face of the planet. And it was foretold by God. He says, this is what I'm going to do. There's nothing else I can do. I just got to get rid of them. It's going to be a nightmare, but it's got to be done. So let's go back to chapter 2 and see how this fits into the whole scenario.
In the middle of the second millennium before the present era, the Earth underwent one of the greatest catastrophes in its history. A celestial body that only shortly before had become a member of the solar system, a new comet, came very close to the Earth. The account of this catastrophe can be reconstructed from evidence supplied by a large number of documents. The comet was on its way from its perihelion and touched the Earth first with its gaseous tail. Later in this book, I shall show that it was about this comet that Servius wrote, "Non igneo sed sanguineo rubore fuisse." It was not of a flaming, but of a bloody redness. One of the first visible signs of this encounter was the reddening of the Earth's surface by a fine dust of rusty pigment. In sea, lake, and river, this pigment gave a bloody colouring to the water. Because of these particles of ferruginous or other soluble pigment, the world turned red. The manuscript Quiche of the Mayas tells that in the Western Hemisphere, in the days of a great cataclysm, when the earth quaked and the sun's motion was interrupted, the water in the rivers turned to blood. Ipua, the Egyptian eyewitness of the catastrophe, wrote his lament on papyrus, "The river is blood," and this corresponds with the book of Exodus, chapter 7, verse 20. All the waters that were in the river were turned to blood. The author of the papyrus also wrote, "Plague is throughout the land. Blood is everywhere." And this too corresponds with the book of Exodus, chapter 7, verse 21. There was blood throughout all the land of Egypt. The presence of the hematoid pigment in the rivers caused the death of fish, followed by decomposition and smell. And the river stank, Exodus chapter 7, verse 21. And all the Egyptians digged round about the river for water to drink, for they could not drink of the water of the river. Exodus chapter 7, verse 24. The papyrus relates, "Men shrink from tasting, human beings thirst after water, and "That is our water, that is our happiness. What shall we do in respect thereof? All is ruin." The skin of men and of animals was irritated by the dust, which caused boils, sickness, and the death of cattle, a very grievous murrain. Wild animals, frightened by the portents in the sky, came close to the villages and cities. The summit of mountainous Thrace received the name Hemus, and Apollodorus related the tradition of the Thracians that the summit was so named because of the stream of blood which gushed out of the mountain when the heavenly battle was fought between Zeus and Typhon was struck by a thunderbolt.
Wow, that I've shown it over and over and over. Typhon was cut, his neck, the dragon in the desert, and blood gushed everywhere. Well, that I can agree. And I did write a paper, actually a video, and I never did even publish it, but I did write the paper called Jesus Chemistry. It's on academia.edu, and it's about if Jesus was literally born from the feared god Jupiter, and he was Venus, and came close to the earth, it would be just like afterbirth. Because Venus was born just like a regular creature would have been born from a vagina. I mean, it's just bizarre, but it's just true. If you've been watching my videos about Venus and the Great Red Spot, it is exactly the size, and it is a vagina. And that apparently is where Venus came from.
It is said that a city in Egypt received the same name for the same reason. The mythology which personified the forces of the cosmic drama described the world as coloured red. In one Egyptian myth, the bloody hue of the world is ascribed to the blood of Osiris, the mortally wounded planet god. In another myth, it is the blood of Seth or Apopi. In the Babylonian myth, the world was coloured red by the blood of the slain Tiamat, the heavenly monster.
All right, they're all very similar sort of stories, but I can tell you one thing for an absolute 100% fact. The earth was covered with red blood. It's called the red bed. And then the gray clay was above it, and the black cap was from the fallout of all the combustion. So this falls exactly into the Triassic period, the red bed. He keeps talking about red. Everything was red. Everything was red. Well, that falls exactly into the Triassic red bed, gray clay, black cap. And that all happened almost overnight because I have a human footprint in the middle of those three wet series of events. And it's in the Triassic rock. It's in the red bed. All right, so here goes.
The Finnish epos of Kalevala describes how, in the days of the cosmic upheaval, the world was sprinkled with red milk. The Altai Tatars tell of a catastrophe when blood turns the whole world red and a world conflagration follows. The Orphic hymns refer to the time when the heavenly vault, mighty Olympus, trembled fearfully, and the earth around shrieked fearfully, and the sea was stirred, heaped, troubled with its purple waves. An old subject for debate is, why is the Red Sea so named? If a sea is called black or white, that may be due to the dark colouring of the water or to the brightness of the ice and snow. The Red Sea has a deep blue colour. As no better reason was found, a few coral formations or some red birds on its shores were proposed as explanations of its name. Like all the water in Egypt, the water on the surface of the Sea of the Passage was of a red tint. It appears that Raphael was not mistaken when, in painting the scene of the passage, he coloured the water red. It was, of course, not this mountain or that river on that sea exclusively that was reddened, thus earning the name Red or Bloody, as distinguished from other mountains and seas. but crowds of men, wherever they were, who witnessed the cosmic upheaval and escaped with their lives, ascribed the name humus or red to particular places. The phenomenon of blood raining from the sky has also been observed in limited areas and on a small scale in more recent times. One of these occasions, according to Pliny, was during the consulship of Manius Acilius and Gaius Porcius. Babylonians, too, recorded red dust and rain falling from the sky. Instances of bloody rain have been recorded in diverse countries. The red dust, soluble in water, falling from the sky in water drops, does not originate in clouds, but must come from volcanic eruptions or from cosmic spaces. The fall of meteorite dust is a phenomenon generally known to take place mainly after the passage of meteorites. This dust is found on the snow of mountains and in polar regions. The hail of stones. Following the red dust, a small dust, like ashes of the furnace, fell in all the land of Egypt, Exodus chapter 9 verse 8, and then a shower of meteorites flew toward the earth.
Okay, let me explain to you the Jesus chemistry or the Venus chemistry. I don't know who it was, but it was a biological body that came from Jupiter with the red blood of the creature in its afterbirth blood and this ash that would burn coming through the extremely hot ionosphere. It's close to 3,000 degrees out there. And then on top of that, the stones fell, which would be literally the umbilical cord. The umbilical cord is tough and rocky as hell. And when it would come through the atmosphere, you would have a hail of stones. So we have the bloody afterbirth. We have the body of the creature, the Venus, basically bouncing off our atmosphere, leaving all this blood everywhere. And then the shower of stones came. And that's exactly what I wrote or in my video. And I still have the video. You see this? This is on Mars. That is connective tissue, and all of the red stuff that would have pulled it in is just sort of eroded away. There's no moisture erosion here. It is on Mars. They say this continually happened millions of years, layer after layer after layer. No, this happened in one day or a couple of days when these giant creatures got hit by Venus, which it tore right across Mars, tore the guts out of Mars, ripped the atmosphere off, and killed literally everything on Mars. And here's the Mars blueberries. These are identical to the Utah, the Moki marbles, all over Utah, Arizona, everywhere. Those are interstitium balls, and this is what interstitium is. It's skin. And this is on Mars as well. And that skin is pinched, stretched. The balls are the anchors. This is biology, my friends, and they cannot deny this. All they can do is run and hide, and that's what they have done successfully for 10 years. These are muscle sarcomeres. This is the Mars crab. There it is right there. It's an artery. It's feeding all of the muscle with blood. And that's what's running out of here is all the red, dusty blood from the impact of Venus into Mars, ripping everything to shreds. It's the same stuff. Muscle sarcomeres, muscle sarcomeres, muscle sarcomeres, and muscle sarcomeres. Hearts, hearts, hearts. It's time to take this and start to understand we are not living in the world we thought we are, my friends. I'm going to leave it at that for today. We're going to go back into Velikovsky's book, Worlds in Collision, and we're going to go right back to here. Chapter 2, we just did Venus, about the birth of Venus, and now the impact of this particular event on Earth. And it's exactly what I said about all that red blood stuff coming everywhere. All right, so we're going to be getting back to that in the next video. Thank you. Love you all.